Good morning. Welcome to Convince Me Super Bowl 57 edition. We're presented by Bet365. It is the top of the Action Network Power Hour. Back half of the hour, we've got the Touchdown Show with Nick Giffen and Gilles Gallant. But first, I got a panel of experts that are going to try to convince me what I should bet on for the Super Bowl today. Sean Koerner, Chris Raybon, Simon Hunter. Later on in the show, Darren Rovell with market updates, Evan Abrams with some trivia. Folks, we are covering it all. Sides, totals, props, MVP, touchdowns, you name it. We got it. Before we get into any of it, let me remind everybody, we are presented by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with promo code ACTION to get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey, Colorado, and Ohio. Bet $1, get $200 in bet credits. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Listen, Simon, you are the resident Eagles fan. Before we hopped on the show, before we went on air, you look miserable. Tell us how you're going to spend the day, what you're going to do for the game. How do you manage this day?
Well, luckily, I'm only 20 minutes from Philadelphia, so usually I would go and watch games with buddies or something, but during the playoffs, I try to watch alone. So for this game, I'm just gonna not watch. I'm just gonna listen on the radio. If they win, I'll rewatch this game 1,000 times. If they lose, I'll never have to watch this game ever again. So that's kind of how I look at it. If we're up in the fourth quarter, I'll just head into Philly. Park my car somewhere off Broad Street and hopefully get ready for a good time. But I haven't slept. People probably can tell a little bit from my voice too. I just had not slept well, at least 5 days now. So as an Eagles fan, confident all week, and like most Eagles fans, woke up this morning and just thought, well, we're gonna lose. So that's where I'm at as an Eagles fan. But as a bettor, I still believe in this Eagles team.
All right, well, let's get to it. Koerner, you're going to kick us off with your favorite prop to convince me.
Yeah, so my favorite prop is still the Chiefs to call the first timeout. And you could still get it at minus 105. Sportsbooks are sort of treating this like the coin toss, where it's just, a lucky 50-50 proposition. But that's not the case, because typically the first timeout called in each game is what I consider a wasteful timeout, a timeout that's taken before 4 minutes left in the half, where, the offense or defense has to call a timeout because they don't have the right personnel. The offense could be trying to avoid a delay of game penalty or any other reason. So wasteful timeouts are pretty predictive. So I spent 30 minutes looking through all the Chiefs and Eagles games so nobody else would have to, and logged all their first timeouts. And the Chiefs called the first timeout in 15 of their 19 games this season. So that's a 79% rate. And 12 of those first timeouts were of the wasteful variety, like I was mentioning, by Andy Reid. And on the other side, it's the exact opposite. Nick Sirianni, since he's come in the league, has been incredibly efficient, saving his timeouts for the final 2 minutes. So the Eagles have only called the first timeout in 7 of 19 games this season. So that's a 37% rate. Only 5 of those timeouts were of the wasteful variety. So I propose that Andy Reid seems way more likely to call the first wasteful timeout in this game. And I would put it closer to a 65% chance of hitting. So the fact that we could still get this at minus 105 is a ton of value.
Folks, when I say this is the pregame show with all of the stuff and none of the fluff, this is what I'm talking about. Sean Koerner is doing the work so you don't have to. I think we've just created a new metric. We started with luck rankings to begin the year. We are now going with wasteful timeouts as a new stat in the NFL. Simon, what do you got?
Chad, I'm going chalky. I like to think in my own mind that we set the market. So this isn't totally chalk. This is just people listening to get information, but it's pretty chalky. It's probably the number one bet prop right now in most sports books, and that's over 19.5 rushing yards for Kenneth Gainwell. I think the books are just continually undervaluing this guy, where they're kind of taking his average for the whole season and not really factoring the fact that the Eagles trust this kid. They're giving him more and more touches in these playoffs. He's averaging over 13 rushes per game. Guess who gives up over 6 yards per carry in these playoffs? The Chiefs. The Chiefs have one of the worst run defenses in football. So looking at this matchup, we just need 2 or 3 touches for this kid, and I think he'll be able to bust one. He's just been that hard of a runner. He really does hit the hole hard, and they just trust him. I mean, Miles Sanders, he's the guy everyone's looking to, right? He's kind of been the most guy bet up for this MVP sleeper. He's everyone's talking about. I'm all on Kenneth. I'm all over his rushing. I'm on his anytime touchdown. I'm on his MVP stuff. I love Kenneth Gainwell. I just think he's this kind of guy that this is what happens in these Super Bowls. It's these random guys who make these huge marks. And it's a guy that over the course of the season has improved every week. So looking at a guy whose touches have gone up in the playoffs, I don't think they've adjusted enough. If this was 25, maybe that'd give me a pause. The fact it's still under 20, I love this number for Kenneth Gainwell. So behind this Eagles offensive line against a Chiefs defense that struggles against the run, I have to take this value. I'm taking Kenneth Gainwell with the rest of the public.
All right, Kenneth Gainwell. Raybon, something disgusting. We've done more than 20 shows this year. I feel like you need to end on theme. Give me something disgusting.
All right, let's go something disgusting. Let's go Jerick McKinnon under 5.5 rushing attempts. He's been under 5.5 rushing attempts in 63% of his games this season. He's been under that number in 4 of his last 5. And the one game he didn't was the first game of the playoffs. And the Chiefs, in the past, they've increased his workload in the playoffs. So they tried it against the Jaguars, and he ran 11 times for 25 yards. And the next week, they were like, all right, back to 4 carries for you. That's his median for the year. It's 4 carries. He's been averaging under 2 a carry over the past 5 weeks. So there's no reason to think that he's going to tick back up in that area, especially when you probably are getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire back, who could take some of that workload if something happens to Pacheco. So I think this is a slam dunk for McKinnon under 5.5. I would bet it up to about minus 155.
You've been banging under McKinnon all week. I think you're on his under
longest
9.5 longest rush,
yeah.
right?
Yep. I just don't think he's going to be a major factor in this game because of how well Isaiah Pacheco is playing in all facets now. It used to be McKinnon was the clear, passing down back, but Pacheco's been better as a blocker and a receiver as of late.
All right. So look, I'm not going to lie. I love all 3 of these bets, but only one of these bets brings me the kind of joy of betting on Andy Reid to make bad clock management decisions in the game, introduces a brand new stat into the football betting universe, wasted timeouts. Sean Koerner, give me Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs take the first time out, minus 105. Well done. That said, I do love the other bets too, and I am going to bet those bets, but for this purpose, Koerner, well done. All right. I think we're going to see a lot of correlation here in what we're talking about with the props, in terms of where people are leading with the sides and the totals. Before we go on to the segment after and get Darren and Evan in here, let's do some spreads and some totals. Koerner, what do you got?
Yeah, so I like the under now that it's up to 51 now. Both offenses are obviously capable of putting up points, but this total is a bit inflated now. I was projecting this closer to 48.5. And our luck rankings that have gone 23-7 on totals since week 12 are showing a -2 rating on this under, which would make it more of a lean, but it just backs up my initial projection. And the Eagles, they're able to generate pressure, the second highest pressure rate in the league, despite only blitzing at a league average rate. So that's the combination that tends to be able to slow down Mahomes just a bit. But also they have an excellent secondary, and all that leads to them having the top ranked defense in DVOA against the pass. So I like this matchup for the Eagles defense. And on the other side, the Chiefs, they're probably going to, likely use a ton of 2 to maybe 3 tight end sets, maybe lean on the run game a bit more here, throw underneath. So when they do have scoring drives, they're probably going to be of the longer variety, 6+ minutes. So even if both teams are efficient, I think they're going to be able to kill enough clock that this game goes under. And, the Eagles, they're obviously going to lean on the run game in an attempt to shorten the game and, keep the Chiefs offense on the sideline. And Chiefs defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo, disguises coverages very well. And we saw Hurts struggle against disguised coverages against the Niners a couple weeks ago. In the end, it didn't matter because the Niners didn't even have a quarterback in the second half. But I think here, it could slow down the game just enough. And plus, 58% of the action's been on the over, 62% of the money. So this has bumped it up to a key number of 51. So I like taking the under here.
All right. Well, listen, all week long, I've been hearing people talk about the over. Well, I bet the under 2 weeks ago, and I bet the under 49.5. So I feel like I got a bad number on betting a side that nobody really wants. So I'm glad you talk about betting the under. Simon, give me your favorite side or total.
I'm going with the Eagles first half, Chad. I looked at this a long time. I really wanted to do the full game, but another person here who's hit 70% for the season took it. So I had to take the scraps and take the first half. But I love the number. We talked all the time. This Eagles team, they're one of the most well-prepared teams all season. They've just been dominant against most teams in the first half. And if you look at it, everyone's always talking about the Andy Reid bye week thing. They're not really talking about this Eagles with extra time to prepare for certain games. This year, when they had a Thursday night game against Houston, the following week, they had extra time to prepare. They dominated that following week. Same thing after their bye week. I think Sirianni's kind of coach where he just can script it really well in the first half. And we've seen that with the Eagles where they were so dominant in the first half this year. They really didn't have to do much in the second half. Obviously, we don't see that happening with the Chiefs. The Chiefs, they won't just lay down and die. They're going to be a team that'll be in it all game. So looking at this, if you're betting the Eagles full game, you might as well bet them first half. They're a team that this year, every game they basically won. I believe they're 14-1 on games where they've led in the first half. So if you want to bet them full game, you might as well throw in a little bet on them first half because you kind of need them to be in the lead here. They're just a different team when they have a lead. We've seen that time and time again. Even when they've struggled, like last week against the 49ers, they couldn't really get it going. They eventually get a spark. They're the kind of thing, once they get something going, that offense can get into a rhythm. They're just unstoppable. Where the Chiefs, we've seen it time and time again. They're a pass-heavy team. Like, it won't be shocking to see them have a couple 3-and-outs, a couple sputters in this first half and not really get their groove where it's just different. It's the Super Bowl. We always talk about that. It's different than a regular season game. It's the hype, everything. It's 2 weeks of a lot of build-up. It tends to be the more veteran team gets a better start. People don't get this. This Eagles team is actually the more veteran team. They had 8 guys on this last team that played in the Super Bowl. So to me, that's a big edge for this Eagles team against a Chiefs team that they're very young on the defense. They're very young on the offense. We talked all year, Chad. They're paying Mahomes $50 million this year, the Chiefs. The Eagles are paying $1 million for Hurts. That to me is such a big, big difference in this game of they're using that money for Reddick, for A.J. Brown, all these different big key pieces to this Eagles team. The Chiefs haven't had that. They're stars and scrubs like in fantasy. They literally got the big names and the rest of it's kind of crappy filler. So the advantage to me, a lot of this game is to this Eagles team. So giving me -1.5 and a plus number for first half, I love the value on this Eagles team.
Look, the conversation all week has been coach and superstar quarterback versus roster. Who do you believe in? Simon, I know what you believe in. Chris Raybon, what do you believe in?
I believe in the Eagles as well. Listen, everybody knows that they're 16-1 straight up with Jalen Hurts starting. But what really did it for me is I went and looked at this, and I don't think it's all going to be on Jalen Hurts, which I can't say the same about it on the other side. And that's because the Eagles' rush offense in games that Hurts has started is just as efficient as the Chiefs' entire offense, passing and running. And that's with the greatest quarterback on the planet playing for the Chiefs. So this Eagles team just has a huge margin for error, I think, on the offensive side of the ball. Then we go over to the other side. Philadelphia's defense, we know one of the top pressure defenses in the league. Well, Mahomes, clean pocket, passer rating of 117. Under pressure, it drops to 78. MVS, 100 yards against Cincinnati slot corner last week. Well, Philadelphia's slot corners are a lot better than Cincinnati, so I don't think they're going to have that advantage. It's really going to be all on Travis Kelce, and I think the Eagles may be able to double him and take some things away. And then, you know, we look at the line movement in this game, and we know the Chiefs at one point were favored. The line's moved a lot. It's moved about 3 points at most books, and in 18 times in Super Bowl history, the line has moved at least 1.5 points. The team it moves towards, which in this case would be the Eagles, 16-2 straight up, 14-4 against the spread. And the reason I give those straight up numbers too is because the number is within 3 points. So most of the time, if you bet whatever side you bet, you just need them to win straight up. So I'm going Eagles here.
You're giving Evan Abrams type stats in the last.
Credit to Evan for that one. That was straight from Evan. So,
that is an Evan Abrams stat.
Yeah, oh yeah.
If I ever heard one,
he's amazing.
Guys, here, I wanted to say this before the show, and I didn't want to mush Simon because I know he's in a panicked state of anxiety right now. Fly, Eagles, fly, baby. Like all week long, it's been building and building and building. And Simon in our podcasts together has been saying to me, I can't believe you're on the Chiefs. I can't believe you're on the Chiefs. I wasn't on the Chiefs. I just hadn't come to a conclusion yet. And all week long, the sentiment, the math, the logic, trying to get out of your head of betting against Patrick Mahomes when everything Raybon just said is true about the Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. All right, Raybon, I'm going with the Eagles -1.5, and I stole Darren Rovell's singing thunder. Hello, Darren. You're going to give us some news, and then we'll do some trivia with Evan.
Chad, it's fly, Eagles, fly. Okay.
Northwestern trained.
There you go. Yeah.
Musical theater.
That's right. Got to end on the same. Simon said that the Kenneth Gainwell prop was probably what most people were betting, and it literally is. It's the number one most bet prop, 18, now 19.5. So that's that. The number two most bet prop is Patrick Mahomes over 0.5 interceptions, and then Patrick Mahomes over 294.5 passing yards. On the spread, we have Eagles -1.5, 64% of bets, 65% of the money. Now, if you look around over the past 36 hours, the money has been coming in on the Chiefs, but it is still the majority Eagles. Total 50.5, 61% of the bets, and 86% of the money is on the over there. So not unexpected. People think that that is still a good value at 50.5. We'll have to see if that moves up a little bit. Obviously 51, as Sean mentioned, is a key number, which makes it a little bit more interesting. Ev, what do you got?
I'll just start with this with Simon, because I know he brought up the salary cap, and I had this note in my rundown. Mahomes has a salary cap hit of 17.2% this year. So since the salary cap started in 94, no quarterbacks won above 13%. And Hurts obviously below 1% right now because he's on his rookie deal. So that would be a first as well. But let me get to the trivia question, because that's kind of what we're here for. So I'm sticking with the Eagles theme since everybody here's on the Eagles anyway. Quarterback coaching experience. So Sirianni and Hurts, Reed and Mahomes. 16th time in history you've had a quarterback coaching duo have experience while the other side doesn't. My question for the group is, what's the last time the inexperienced group were the favorites in the game? It's happened within 2010, so it's recent.
Sean McVay and the Rams. No, they were 3-point underdogs.
Correct.
Who else?
Anyone?
Somebody got one?
I was gonna go Harbaugh. Was it Flacco part of that? Harbaugh?
Eagles against the Patriots?
Okay, so
Eagles, Patriots. The Eagles were 5-point underdogs.
Oh,
They're 5-point underdog.
yeah.
I'll just give it to you guys since it's a good one. Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers were 3-point favorites against Millman and Roethlisberger. And obviously the Packers won the game.
Dude, that feels like it might as well have been
30 years ago.
30 years ago.
That's actually the scenario right now that the Eagles are sitting in against a team that has a ton of experience, similar type of spot. So felt that was kind of appropriate for the moment. And here's another one that might be a little bit easier. Okay. So Chiefs open -2.5, Philly now -1.5. It'd be the third Super Bowl to cross through 0. What are the others? They both happened recently.
The Bucks and the Chiefs.
Nope.
Gosh,
Seahawks, Patriots.
Say again.
Seahawks, Patriots.
That's one of them.
What's the other one?
Give us a hint.
It's not. You could literally repeat what Simon just said.
Seahawks, Broncos.
There it is.
Oh,
Hey, look at me. I'm winning already.
There it is.
All right,
Darren,
Ev. Yeah, so let's discuss one more props odds scenario. Let's talk about Super Bowl MVP. People think Mahomes is okay, and so it's gone from 4-1 to +130 on Mahomes. Hurts has actually gone from +650 to +140, and then Travis Kelce 28-1 to 11-1. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, I do think that Raybon has a really interesting scenario on betting MVP that we talked about on the Favorites podcast earlier this week, but you should share it on this show as well because it's smart math.
Yeah, so we know the quarterback wins about 70% of the time. You're not really getting great value at Mahomes plus 130 or Hurts plus 140 even. The real odds would be closer to plus 170, plus 180 for each of them. But if you look at the fact that after those two quarterbacks, everyone's basically a long shot. Like even Travis Kelce, 11-1, that's pretty much a long shot. You know, you can bet whatever team you think is going to win the game. You can bet that quarterback at plus money. And then you can add a couple of other long shots. Like you can pair, let's say, Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown, and AJ Brown is something like 18-1. And, you know, if you put $100 on Hurts, you only have to put about $12 on Brown at 18-1 to kind of maximize your profit and lock in a profit if either of them win. So I think that's kind of the way that I would go about it here. It's a pretty unique kind of market where we kind of know the top two most likely, but they're still plus money. And then everyone else is a long shot, but we still know, like, you know, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Kelce, like those are still the most likely guys if it's not the quarterback. So I think that's how you want to bet it. You want to combine a quarterback with at least one other long shot on that same team.
All right. Well, Koerner and Simon, let's say you don't want to be a coward and go Raybon's route. Koerner, who are you taking for MVP?
I'm taking a running back. I'm going with Miles Sanders at 25-1. I already wrote up, you know, his prop to lead the game in rushing yards at plus 175. A lot of the similar reasons, you know, just his usage has been capped all season long with the Eagles blowing so many teams out. So he's actually had 80% of the rush attempts when trailing or winning by fewer than 7 points. And it drops to 60% when the Eagles are up by 7 or more. So this is a spot where I think he's going to finish closer to ceiling. If you look at his week 4 performance, he would have won MVP that week. So we already have an example of that. So I just like the value we're getting at 25-1 here.
Simon?
I usually go pretty chalky. I'm kind of where Chris is at, where I kind of go QBs. And the Eagles are such a dominant team. I don't really think the Hurts value is there. But a team like the Chiefs, where it's kind of all based off Mahomes, I got really lucky the year he won it all. Because basically no one thought he was going to win that MVP. And their money line, the year they played against the 49ers was minus 150. Mahomes was plus 120. So I literally just looked at that and was like, okay, I can get better value by just simply taking Mahomes on the MVP than taking them, which is a risky proposition. It doesn't always work out that way. But I kind of feel the same way about them this year. You can take either plus 105 on the money line with the Chiefs, or you could just take Mahomes win MVP, which it really would be shocking. Like the Kelce thing, I'm with Chris on that, where I would make a little hedge there maybe, because you could see Kelce have an out-of-body experience, maybe 3 touchdowns, 120 yards. That could maybe get him the MVP. There's just really no other scenario with this Chiefs team winning. I don't see it being on Mahomes' back. It's just that's how good of a team this Eagles team is, where if they're going to win this game, it's most likely going to be in the arm of Mahomes. So the fact that you can still get him at above plus 120 in most books, I like that value still on Mahomes.
All right. We got one more Super Bowl prop segment since these guys are brilliant at it. It's our bonus prop segment. Koerner, you lured me in with Andy Reid clock management in prop segment number 1. How can you woo me in prop segment number 2?
Yeah, that one's also Nick Sirianni clock management as well. It goes both ways. But I have another fun one that's similar to the timeout prop, where we can only get this type of prop for the Super Bowl. And I'm going with Jalen Hurts, most consecutive completions over 5.5. He's cleared this in 9 of 17 games, but that's a small sample size. So I decided to simulate the game 10,000 times. And I was getting him to clear this around 65% of the time. I had to double check my math. I asked Dr. Nick to also run his simulations, and he got the same exact number. So we're both getting this cashing at 65% of the time. So it's a perfect predictive analytics team kind of play here. But in week 12, you know, Jalen Hurts completed 7 consecutive completions 3 separate times. So if you actually had those in 2 different games, he would have cleared this prop exactly 65% of the season. So I'm sticking with my projection that this is going to hit 65% of the time. So I think we get a ton of value here at minus 135.
Koerner, digging into timeouts, running 10,000 simulations, calling your mathematician buddy, Dr. Nick, that everyone can watch on the touchdown show after the game. People say that you're not fun. I disagree. Everything you're doing sounds like it's just
Wait, who
a
says that?
blast. It just sounds amazing. Simon Hunter, impress me.
Chad, another pick here, a prop we gave out earlier in the week, and it's moved. I still think there's good value though. We gave this out over 2.5 pass attempts by players in this game. It was out plus 154. It's down to plus 125. So that number's been moving, and I think it's because of a little bit of a leak from the media of the Chiefs running a play of Travis Kelce doing a little jump pass, and they had apparently Juju Smith-Schuster doing a sweep pass. So a couple of rumors there on the Chiefs, and on the Eagles side, we've already read about Kenneth Gainwell being a quarterback all through high school and played a little in college. So it's another player on the Eagles team that can take the ball to the backfield and pass. And A.J. Brown has thrown his hat in the ring saying he might have a little something up his sleeve that he can pass the ball. Because if you recall, he did actually one time in Tennessee. So there are a couple of options on both these teams. But I feel like me and you talk about this all the time. We love when it's the last game of the year and it's against two dominant teams that, yeah, you can say they haven't really done any trick plays these playoffs. I think it's because they've been saving them. It's usually in that moment where it's do or die, these teams bring out these trick plays. Last year was really fluky. We had 5 different players throw the pass last year. One was on a box extra point. Remember that the kicker picked up and just threw it? That counts, people. We get something stupid like that, this bet hits. So I love these kind of bets where it's the last game of the year and you have two teams that they love to do high risk plays. They both coaches have fun offensive play mind. So to me, if it's kind of a boring matchup, if it was between, a defensive coach and another guy that's like, not really offensively doing crazy things, I probably would stay away from this. We've seen the pros like this one. The fact the numbers move down so much, it's just one of those ones where I think most people don't really look for it because it's kind of ones you have to seek out in the prop bets. But I think it's worth it at a plus number, especially when so many little things can happen where all we need is a botched extra point and the kicker to pick it up and try to throw the ball, and we get it here. So I love the option here of just over 2.5 pass attempts by players in this game.
Oh my God, that's so much fun. Raybon, is your prop as much fun as that?
I think it's pretty fun because you can bet it's going to be right at the beginning of the game. It's the opening kickoff, and I'm betting that, yes, there will be a touchback. I would bet this up to about minus 200. When you look at the kickers in this game, Jake Elliott, 68 touchbacks on 104 kickoffs, so that's 65%. And then Butker, 50 of 80, that's 63%. But remember, we're here in Arizona. You have the retractable roof stadium. So I went back and looked at just their games in these kind of stadiums, indoors, retractable roof, where weather's not really a factor, right? Jake Elliott, touchbacks on 22 of 23 kickoffs, 96%. And Harrison Butker, 83%, 15 of his 18 in these kind of conditions. So I think there's a really high chance that whichever team kicks it off first, they're booming it out the back of the end zone.
See, at first I was going to be like, boring kickoff, but then you came to me with the math and I loved it. I'm still going with Simons over 2.5, players passing the ball, only because this is the kind of game where Andy Reid empties the playbook, right? And he's probably been thinking about it for months. What are the special plays I can use in the Super Bowl? I also think Nick Sirianni is not afraid to go for broke. I think there's a lot of opportunities here for this to cash. And it's obviously better odds than what you're giving me on the opening kickoff. I like it. Listen, Koerner, I like Jalen Hurts over 5.5 for consecutive completions. I think that's great too. I love your math too. All you guys have done great math all season long. I don't want you to feel bad because I'm going with Simon and his over 2.5 players making a pass in the game. All right, Darren, your last convince me segment.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. All right. Here we go. Let's make it a good one. First TD, Travis Kelce plus 600, AJ Brown plus 850, and Jalen Hurts plus 750. That's your top 3. Then anytime TD, Travis Kelce minus 120. By the way, one bookmaker said it's as if the public thinks that it's free money on every single Travis Kelce over. So the numbers on Kelce on anytime TD minus 120. It's almost like the public thinks it should be minus 500. Jalen Hurts plus 110 and Isaiah Pacheco plus 140. Let's do the convince me ad read, which is that this show is underwritten by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with the promo code ACTION to get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, and Virginia. Bet $1 and get $200 in bet credits. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, the reason why I was confused there is because we do have to tell you about a favorite anytime touchdown for the Super Bowl tonight. We went on Twitter, and as I said, Travis Kelce, -120. This is the first poll all season where someone has gotten more than 50% of the vote. 50.5% for Kelce, 27.1% for Hurts at +110. Isaiah Pacheco +140, 12.7%, and Miles Sanders at -105, only getting 9.6% of the vote, Chad.
Dude, you brought it all together. I got worried about you for a second, but you held it
Yeah,
together.
there's always those tenuous moments, but that's what makes the show exciting.
Listen, we're doing a prop contest for the Super Bowl. So after the show, look for the tweet, respond with who you think will score the first touchdown tonight. You could win $100. Before we kick it to the touchdown show with Nick Giffen and Gilles Gallant, Koerner, Simon, and Raybon, I want to get your thoughts on anytime touchdowns. Koerner, you're first.
So I'm going with Quez Watkins at +800, and I will actually be going more in depth on this on the touchdown show coming up next.
All right, fine. Simon.
Chad, last year, I can't disappoint the fans. Last year, I gave out the first time anytime touchdown score in Odell Beckham. This year, going back to it, going to go off script, go first time anytime touchdown score. A.J. Brown, +950, +1,000. Love the odds. Love A.J. He's been talking all week. He's going up against a rookie corner. Give it to me. Give it to me. Give it to me. I love them to take a shot to A.J. to start the game. So I love the odds on that.
I remember you were all over A.J. Brown for that Titans-Eagles matchup, and you nailed it. It's almost like you're inside the head of the Eagles right now. Raybon, what do you got?
We got to close it up with some chalk because Travis Kelce just does this way too good. Scored in each of his last 5 playoff games, 8 of his past 9. And he's also scored first in 8 of the 19 Chiefs games this year. So, it is very chalky, but first touchdown, you're still getting 6-1. There's a good chance he scores, and there's a good chance that he scores early in the game if he does score. So whether you're going anytime, whether you're going first touchdown, you got to go with my boy, Travis Kelce.
All right, folks. Well, listen, the game is all about touchdowns. You got to score to win the game. So stick around for the touchdown show in the second half of the Action Network Power Hour. We are presented by Bet365. You can track everything we're doing, all the picks, all the data, all the research, available for free in the award-winning Action Network app. This was the last episode of Convince Me for the season. For Sean Koerner, for Simon Hunter, for Chris Raybon, for Darren Rovell, for Evan Abrams, for our fantastic production crew that keeps it going every single week, every single day, every single hour. I am Chad Millman. Good luck today. Stick around for the touchdown show.
Thank you, Chad, and the whole Convince Me crew. Great job as always. Great season by them. And now, welcome to the touchdown show on the Action Network presented by Bet365. I'm Gilles Gallant. He is Dr. Nick Giffen, a.k.a. RotoDoc. Nick had a little bit of a break, but now it's the Super Bowl, and we've got the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, both 1 seeds in their conference. We had a nice week off, but now, man, we've gotten to game day, and I am just jacked up for football and betting on some touchdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is going to be a great game. You mentioned it, the 2 number 1 seeds. And this is our 24th edition of the touchdown show this year. Definitely been a heck of a year. So I'm like you said, you're jacked up. I'm pumped up as well. So as always, we are going to give our official anytime touchdown picks for today's slate. A little bit of a twist. We'll have some fun segments in there for you. We're also going to bring on Sean Koerner to give his touchdown pick. And for any additional picks, be sure to follow us in the Action app.
Yeah, absolutely. So not only is Koerner going to be coming on here a little bit later in the show, we're going to do a couple of interesting scenario bets as well, where we could maybe find some value potentially on the live side of things. We're going to look at who's the most bet in the game. Also, make sure to stick around for the entire show because we've got also an anytime touchdown boosted same game parlay from Bet365 that we're going to reveal at the end. There's no gimmicks, just some boosted odds on some great players. Also, make sure to look out on the Action Network Twitter account tonight for our contest. If you reply with who you think scores the first touchdown in Chiefs versus Eagles, you can win $150 with the correct answer. It's going to be Kelsey. Anyway, so now we are going to be talking about touchdowns. Before we get started, though, the Touchdown Show is presented by bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. If you sign up with promo code ACTION, you'll get bet365's exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, and now Virginia. Bet $1 and you get $200 in bet credits. Nick, let's look at the touchdown odds from this game. We were able to find out who were the most bet anytime touchdown scorers in the game. First guy off the hop, pretty natural pick. Travis Kelce is the most bet anytime touchdown scorer in this game, followed by Jalen Hurts at plus 110. Isaiah Pacheco, the running back for the Chiefs, at plus 140. Patrick Mahomes also now in the top 5, seeing his odds down to plus 375. And of course, wide receiver 1 with the Eagles at plus 125. Nick, is there anything from a takeaway standpoint that you see other than it's a pretty chalky top 5?
Yeah, it's a super chalky top 5. I mean, I think we all expected Travis Kelce to be number 1 there, Jalen Hurts to be number 2. I think Pacheco sneaking in at 3rd is a little interesting. So, I thought maybe it could have been somebody like a Goddard or maybe even a McKinnon. So definitely thought it was interesting that Pacheco snuck in there, not only in the top 5, but all the way up to 3rd. I thought that was the most interesting one to me. The one we're actually showing the closest in terms of like our projection value actually is Jalen Hurts at plus 110. It's like 96% of value. So if he somehow slips up to like plus 115 anywhere, that means we end up showing projection value on Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you about the Pacheco versus McKinnon side of things. I figured McKinnon would have a little bit more bets just because of the way that he finished the season, especially in the second half, as far as receiving touchdowns go. Also very surprised despite the ankle injury. And I felt like I was kind of going out on a limb talking about Patrick Mahomes for an anytime touchdown. But, seeing him now in the top 5 shows that even bettors are willing to overlook that kind of injury. Speaking of touchdown score picks, though, let's give out our first bet. I want to give us started here, Nick. And my best bet for Super Bowl 57 is going to be Dallas Goedert. And I bet him the day after the conference championships. I grabbed it at plus 220, wrote an article, posted it on Action Network about why I was betting on Dallas Goedert. He is now down to plus 187. I would still play him at these odds. And part of the reason why I bet on Goedert is the connection with Jalen Hurts that he has shown, especially since the start of last season when Jalen Hurts became the starter. One of the first stats that I look at for touchdown scores, and just as far as connection is concerned, is first down catches. And in this season, over the last 2 seasons, so since the start of 2021, Dallas Goedert has 83 first down catches. And to put that in perspective, in the first 3 seasons with both Carson Wentz and, the run of different quarterbacks that they had, he only had 76 first downs in the first 3 seasons combined, as opposed to 83 in the last 2. And I bring that up because Dallas Goedert, he only played 12 games this year, as opposed to some of his counterparts like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, both playing 17 games. If Goddard had played a full slate, he actually would have had more first down catches than AJ and Devontae. So I think that's worth mentioning because a lot of people are going to be gravitating to both AJ and Devontae for touchdown bets today. But I think Goddard is the way you want to go because attacking the slot is the key to beating this Chiefs defense. We've talked about this on the show for weeks now, talking about it with Christian Kirk. Tyler Boyd looked pretty good 2 weeks ago in the conference championship before he got hurt. Goddard, of course, lines up exclusively in the slot. And since coming off the bye, like from week 10 onward for the Chiefs, they've given up at least 1 touchdown in the slot in all but 2 games, Nick. And the 2 games that they didn't were in week 13 and the AFC Championship game. Common opponent, it was the Cincinnati Bengals. In every other game, they were giving up a touchdown to the slot. And I know some people will look at historical matchups as well because these 2 teams did play each other in week 4 in 2021. A lot of overlap in personnel. In that game, Dallas Goedert caught the first touchdown for the Eagles on this Chiefs defense. So Dallas Goedert, to me, is my best bet for Super Bowl 57 to score.
Yeah, I think that's a very good pick. And, especially at the plus 220 odds that you got it at. I think Goddard's an interesting pick as well. Just one little extra thing in there. If you look at Kansas City defensively, they play man coverage at the 8th highest rate in the NFL. Yeah. Goddard has been a little bit better in yards per route run versus man than zone. And if you look at the touchdown breakdown, which is what we're concerned about as far as touchdowns. 2 touchdowns versus man, none versus zone, and then the rest of his touchdowns kind of versus an undefined scheme. So I do think that benefits him a little bit, that he has caught when there has been a specific defensive scheme. They've all been versus man defense. So I'm going to move over to my pick, Gilles, and I've got a fun one here. I am taking Kenneth Gainwell plus 360 to get an anytime touchdown. You actually can find him now at plus 410. So I didn't quite catch him at the peak. He's drifted a little bit since I made the pick a day or two ago, whichever day it was. But, I really, really like this Kenneth Gainwell pick. There's, a very real possibility the Eagles trail in this game, maybe even for a good chunk of this game, after not spending a whole lot of time trailing this year. They've had a lot of blowout wins, for example. And I think that's important because Gainwell is the Eagles running back that is going to benefit most from a trailing game script. If we just look at opportunities for each of the Eagles running backs, so targets plus rushing attempts, 35% of Gainwell's opportunities have come via the passing game. So his target versus rushing attempt breakdown is 35% targets compared to 9 or 10% for Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. So definitely seems like the one that would benefit the most from a trailing game script. The Chiefs are also just one of the worst in the NFL versus pass catching running backs. They actually have the 5th worst defensive pass DVOA versus the running back position. They're 28th in that metric. They're 3rd worst in volume and in yards allowed in the air to running backs. So you definitely can move the ball on the Kansas City Chiefs if you're throwing it to your running back. They did give up 4 touchdowns in the regular season in the air to running backs, tied for 6th most. And I think that's important because of Gainwell's 12 career touchdowns, 10 of them have come via the rush, but he has scored 2 receiving touchdowns. So 1/6 of his touchdowns have come by the air. If we add a little bit of extra opportunity through the air there for him, plus his rushing ability, I think that sets up very nicely. Kansas City, they're not a dominant run defense as well for when Gainwell does get some rushing attempts. So they're just kind of a mid-pack defense in terms of versus the run the Chiefs are. So I really like this Gainwell play. I think he's going to get some volume today. And I think he's an interesting live betting candidate as well. I know we're going to talk about that. Yeah. So I'm projecting him closer to plus 340, plus 350. So plus 360 was the best value I was showing on any player in this Super Bowl. Plus 410, I absolutely love it. I would go run right now to get it at plus 410.
Yeah, I find it telling, Nick, that both of us, for our best bet, we didn't end up looking on the Chiefs side. And I think that's indicative of kind of where the touchdown odds have been really since 2018, but just over the last few seasons, that it's difficult to find value on Chiefs anytime touchdown scores because a lot of the time their odds are just so juiced. Like even Travis Kelce, even though he likely will be involved and could very well score a touchdown, you're seeing him sometimes at some weeks like minus 150. When they played, for example, that week 4 game, I always like to refer to, like, Travis Kelce was minus 150 to score a touchdown in that game. Like, there's a lot of the times it's very difficult to find value on Chiefs players. So I think that's the one reason why we ended up gravitating more to the Eagles, because the Eagles kind of spread it around a little bit more. And there's a lot of steam on Gainwell these past 2 weeks, especially with how integral he looked in this offense against the Niners and both the Giants, double-digit carries in both of those games. He did score on the Chiefs in that week 4 game I keep referring to. And, is the pass catching back for this team. So I think Kenneth Gainwell, very solid pick, solid value. And that's the way that we're going to start our first bets for Super Bowl 57. Now, one of the things, Nick, that I get asked a lot in the DMs about touchdown scores is, what do you think about X player? Should I wait, to halftime to bet him? Should I maybe wait till they're trailing? And a lot of the time, those questions, they're very hypothetical, but at the same time, you could find tremendous value in touchdown scores if you kind of wait to see a specific thing happen. So one of the things that we're going to do today, a little new segment here, is we're going to talk about some maybe specific betting scenarios for how this game will play out and what we would do in that scenario from a touchdown score perspective, and how we would approach it. And this is kind of just a little bit of a tease into what we're going to be doing later, because both Nick and I are going to be on at halftime for Bet What Happens Live. So we could potentially see some of these situations come to fruition. But the first scenario that I thought of from this game is the Eagles up by 10 or more at halftime. And I mean, you talk to any Eagles fan, they'll tell you that they're winning by 20, at the most. Like, they're a very confident bunch at this time of year. So let's say the Eagles are up by 10 at halftime. Let's just use a hypothetical score of 17-7, just something like that, where the Eagles are up by 2 scores. It's halftime. The angles that I would approach for this in this spot, Nick, from a Philadelphia standpoint, I think Devontae Smith for an anytime touchdown is somebody that you'd want to consider if the Eagles are up by 10 or more at halftime, because pre-game he has around plus 175 odds to score a touchdown. And he is very integral in this offense. I actually think that you could potentially bet him again if he scores in the first half. You could actually double down on Devontae. And there's been a lot of late momentum as well for Devontae Smith to win Super Bowl MVP. For example, Brandon Anderson, he wrote a nice piece about it, talking about Super Bowl MVP bets and talking about how he would, at his current odds, I think it's 28-1, maybe even 35-1, depending on the book. But if he scores a touchdown in the first and second half, he's going to be in a prime spot to win that award. So again, I think Devontae Smith is somebody who I would approach if the Eagles have a nice lead at halftime. From the Kansas City Chiefs standpoint, this goes back to who are the most bet. We talked about this off air, Nick. Jerick McKinnon is probably a guy that we want to look at if the Chiefs are trailing at halftime. Now, Jerick McKinnon, his touchdown odds are around plus 150. You're probably going to see plus 250 to plus 300 odds at halftime if the Eagles are up by 10 or more. In a trailing game script, Isaiah Pacheco is likely going to see less snaps in the second half, especially running. Now, I will say as well, if Jerick McKinnon scores in the first half, you could pivot to a Travis Kelce anytime touchdown bet for the second half. And then, of course, if both of them score, then you wouldn't consider either because they're likely not trailing by 10 or more at halftime. So Devontae Smith and Jerick McKinnon are the two guys that I would consider if the Eagles are up by 10 or more at halftime.
Yeah, I think obviously if the Eagles are up by 10 or more at halftime, you got to look at the Chiefs passing game. And one place I would go would be potentially Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney. They're a little bit intertwined here. Obviously, Toney is the guy that the Chiefs would love to use, especially on some, not necessarily gadget plays, but just kind of designed plays for him earlier in the game. But he is always an injury risk. He is obviously coming off of that injury in the championship game as well. So that could potentially open up value for Sky Moore if Toney is limited in some way. And so if this scenario happens, we'll have a chance to gauge how Toney is feeling. And if he's looking and feeling good, I think there's projection value on him. And if not, there will be projection value on Sky Moore because we're showing projection value barely close to fair value on both of these guys. And since they're a little bit intertwined, I'd go with Toney if he's looking good, go with Sky Moore if he isn't looking good in this scenario. So heading over to scenario number 2, this is a scenario I kind of really like. Let's say the Chiefs lead by 6 to 10, 11 points, somewhere in that range, anytime after the first quarter. I think this is an incredible spot because this is what when we do Bet What Happens Live, I always look for these spots because they're kind of counterintuitive to what the books think. So our main angle on this will be the Kenneth Gainwell anytime touchdown, but I really quick want to go to the Chiefs side of the ball. If they lead, we still want to focus on passing touchdowns for these Chiefs because based off the pregame odds, based off of, just the fact that the Eagles are so good and the way these games tend to rubber band back together, it's a counterintuitive spot where you think, okay, the Chiefs are up. That means books will tend to shade towards more of the running game for the Chiefs. But it is actually pretty likely that the Eagles come back. And that means if they do, Kansas City will still have to throw. So whether it's a close game or the Eagles take the lead, Kansas City will still be probably throwing at a good percentage. So we're going to look for books to over adjust on the rushing game odds, making them too short and making the receiving game odds too long. And that's where I think the Chiefs wide receivers, Travis Kelce, could come into play there. But to my main pick here, Kenneth Gainwell, I want to continue to focus on him. And that's because Kenneth Gainwell gets 82.4% of his targets. So in the receiving game, he gets 82.4% of his targets in the middle 2/3 of the game. So not the first 10 minutes, not the last 10 minutes, that middle 2/3 of the game. So that's basically right after the end of the first quarter. And so if the Chiefs take the lead by 6-10, it's not a field goal lead, right? It's not like close enough where, you know, the Eagles can still run with Miles Sanders, but now they probably have to start throwing more if it's like 10, 11, 9, somewhere in that neighborhood, where especially where it's multiple scores. And that's where you'll get more Gainwell. But because it's not so far out of hand, he could still get some rushes in there. And obviously, like I said, 10 of his 12 career touchdowns are on rushes, but he could receive a little bit extra usage overall. So whether it's the rushing game or the passing game, I think that suits him really well. So as long as the Chiefs are up by 6-10, let's say in that middle 2/3 of the game, I think it's a great time to jump on Kenneth Gainwell's live odds. And, you know, like I said, if the Eagles are down by a smaller amount, they may still rely on like a Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts to get it done in the running game rather than necessarily needing to bring in Gainwell, because one touchdown flips it to where they're leading. Whereas, you know, if you're down by 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, that one touchdown doesn't flip it into a lead unless it's a 6 points exactly. So I think that's where I really want to get Gainwell. So that would be my scenario for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so essentially, which again I find just so fascinating, is because we're kind of zigging when everybody is zagging. You would think, okay, well, the Chiefs have the lead, they're going to start to run the ball. It's like actually not quite the case. They actually pass more in that scenario. And then and then the flip side, oh, if the Eagles are trailing, they're going to have to start to throw. It's like not necessarily. So I love the Gainwell angle. Another thing too, of the 12 touchdowns that he scored, 7 of those 12 touchdowns were scored in games that were within this point range. A lot of the perception of Gainwell is that, oh, he's a garbage time running back, or that, you know, but no, it's actually, I've seen him score first touchdown a few times in his career on this offense. So again, really love that approach. A little bit of a tease as well, because we're going to talk about this more in depth when we do the halftime show for Bet What Happens Live.
2-minute warning.
Pardon?
2-minute
right.
warning.
At the 2-minute warning. My apologies. Yeah. So we'll be in a little bit ahead of that. So make sure, again, if you wanted to, if Rihanna's not your thing, you could come check us out. We could give you some advice on how to bet that. But again, if Rihanna's your thing, you know, you can go back and watch it as well. So love the fact that we've got a second show to be able to talk more betting when halftime hits. Now, Nick, another thing that gets brought up a lot in betting Twitter and betting spaces is the term prop god. I find that term to be thrown around a lot, where it's almost kind of now lost its luster. But if there was one person that I could think of that embodies that moniker, it would be the man who is about to join us on this show today. And that is the odds maker himself, Sean Koerner. Sean, welcome to the Touchdown Show. Your debut, making some touchdown bets with us.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So, Sean, now we talk a lot off air. You know, sometimes I'll bring up some touchdown angles and you're like, you know what, I like that angle. And other times I'll bring it up and you're like, don't know if I can get there. So you brought up a touchdown angle to me that I wasn't even considering. And then you kind of made an awesome case. I was hoping you could share that with us and our viewers.
Yeah, so I'm going with Quez Watkins at plus 800. And, you know, Quez is the type of player who just always has a wide range of outcomes. I mean, let's face it, he's a downfield threat on a run-heavy team that played with the lead a ton this year. So the Eagles, you know, they haven't had to tap into his upside much this year. So I like tapping into his upside today. Like Nick said, when he was discussing Gainwell, this could be the rare game where the Eagles play in a close game or even a trailing game script. And the Eagles, they only have 3 receiving touchdowns when trailing this season, and Quez is responsible for one of those. So I think this is a spot where they will use him more. And he's always a threat for a deep touchdown. Like I said, he's a downfield threat. All 3 of his touchdowns this year were 20-plus yards downfield. So in a game where the Eagles, you know, they're going to have to keep their foot on the gas for all 60 minutes, take a couple deep shots. You know, if the Chiefs overcommit to slowing down A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, you know, keeping Jalen Hurts in check in the run game, Quez could be open for a deep score here. So I like his path to getting a touchdown. So if you use his 3 touchdowns on the season in 16 games, that's a fair price of plus 430. I'm projecting a fair price closer to plus 600. So either way, I think we're getting a ton of value on Quez Watkins at plus 800 here.
So with Quez, I think one of the things that the first thing I think of is that last Eagles Super Bowl, like when Alshon Jeffrey catches that 30-yard bomb over the shoulder. Same thing with Corey Clement. Obviously, it's different quarterbacks, different personnel, but we know that the Eagles are kind of capable of having this explosive passing offense. Is there anything in the Chiefs secondary that would give you pause on wanting to bet this at all?
No, not at all. Like I said, if anything, the Chiefs secondary will be, double teaming either AJ Brown or Devontae Smith on most plays. They have to have, a linebacker spy on Jalen Hurts and the RPO game. So this is a game where Quez Watkins might slip through with a long catch. And like I said, he has a wide range of outcomes. I'm giving him a 25 to 30% chance of not even catching a pass in this game. But that's why I love investing in his upside. He's not a player I would bet, over his receiving yard prop or something like that. But in the touchdown market, sign me up.
All right. Now, Sean, before we get you out of here, you had talked about all your best bets on Convince Me. Out of all of them, what is your best bet that isn't a touchdown score for Super Bowl 57?
Oh, man. Well, I just have to stick with the one I talked about on Convince Me. It's Jalen Hurts consecutive completions over 5.5. The reason I love that so much is Nick is showing similar value. We crunched the numbers using our separate methods, and we both arrived at him having at least 6 consecutive completions around 65% of the time. So that is by far my favorite prop.
Beautiful.
Yeah, did a million simulations of that, and
Exactly.
I got 64.6%. So I'm with Sean there. That's one of my favorite bets of the whole Super Bowl. I'm on it myself too.
Yeah, just in case my 10,000 simulations wasn't enough, Nick did it a million times, and he still came up with 65%.
Life is a simulation. All right. Well, boys, again, Sean, appreciate you coming on to the show. Good luck with your bets today, and appreciate you, and we'll be talking again soon.
Thanks for having me, and good luck.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, now, Nick, let's move to another touchdown score pick that I like today. He was included in the top 5 of most bet anytime touchdown scorers, and I'm following suit. I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes for an anytime touchdown at plus 500. I see him now down to around the plus 400 range. I'd still bet it at those odds, and I'm not quite as bold as maybe Sean would be with taking Quez at plus 800, but this is my long shot bet of the game. And Nick, my main logic why I'm betting on Mahomes in this game is I think his ankle is going to be healed enough to scramble. Like even against the Bengals in the conference championship, it was almost night and day, like how he looked in comparison to the Jaguars after that injury. And he had the critical run to seal the game against the Bengals. Now, when you look at Mahomes from a historical standpoint, 13 career playoff games, he's got 5 rushing touchdowns. His rushing attempts actually have picked up in comparison to the regular season. He has about 1.2 more carries per game in the playoffs as opposed to the regular season. And the Eagles defense, not going to take anything away from them. Very strong. They lead the NFL in sacks. But one of the things that I think is a little bit of a weakness to them is they actually were very susceptible to rushing yards to quarterbacks. They allowed the 4th most rushing yards to QBs this year. And when you look at it on a yards per carry basis, it was 6.5 yards per carry. To put that in perspective, that was 31st in the NFL, like only ahead of the Lions. And I think that's the one thing that people kind of have to consider is that the Eagles, again, very strong defense, but they can be beaten in certain ways. Now, Nick, you could probably go for a water break on this one. I just want to say that this is my final point on why I'm going to be betting on Patrick Mahomes to score a touchdown. And maybe because I've had some DMs of people asking me like, are you sure? Like, look, if you don't want to bet on Patrick Mahomes to score a touchdown, that's okay. But just say it's because of the high ankle sprain and don't tell me it's because of how awesome the Eagles defense is. Like when we look back historically for this quarterback in 2020, when he won the Super Bowl, the 49ers coming into that game, best rushing defense in the NFL. He scored the first touchdown in that game, had plus 350 odds to score a touchdown in that game. And I know people will say, well, Gilles, that was like almost 3 years ago. Why are you bringing it? It's like, okay, well, let's talk about this season then. Let's go to week 9 versus the Titans. Tennessee, coming into that game, had only given up 1 rushing touchdown the entire year. They were first in rush defense, DVOA entering the game. Well, in the second half, Chiefs are trailing 17-10. Mahomes scrambles for 50 yards in the second half, scores a touchdown to force overtime. He had plus 400 odds to score a touchdown in that game. And I keep bringing up the odds because that's why I bet it at plus 500 because I feel like I'm getting value because he hasn't been above plus 400 odds all season from my tracked odds. So one of the things I will say is, does this mean that I think he's going to go over his rushing yard prop? Hell no. Like, I'm not saying to take the over on that or take alternate overs, anything like that. But I do think if the Chiefs are inside the 10-yard line, his touchdown prop is very live. So I love Patrick Mahomes to score a touchdown in Super Bowl 57.
Yeah, I think, we just had him on, but Sean Koerner in our anytime touchdown draft.
Yes.
He got we had six NFL experts doing our anytime touchdown draft, and he got the turn there. So he had the 6th and the 7th pick. He took Patrick Mahomes as well. So I think there's some good juju there. I will say I don't have an official second pick for an anytime touchdown. I will have 2 picks on some other touchdown bets here, but I do, like I said, I do want to keep an eye on Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. If there's any news that comes out, especially about Toney, there could be some value on Sky Moore. If it's bad news on Toney, or if it's good news on Toney, then I want to pounce on his anytime touchdown, because our projections are showing just barely close to value on each. Right now, it looks like Toney best out there is around plus 340 and around plus 950 for Sky Moore. So both of those are right on the edge of where we would consider fair value on them. So no official second pick for me, but I did want to at least throw that out there as something I'm keeping an eye on as we head up towards kickoff.
Well, and that's a perfect reason, Nick, to and a segue to promote the Action Network app, because if you do decide that you're going to take Toney, you want to set notifications for Nick's account, because he's going to place it there and you'll get a notification right to your phone to tell you that he has placed that bet, so you can go tail him right away. So
yeah, when you do that, go up to my page, hit the dots up in the top right or whatever. It'll say notifications. You want to turn them from hourly to instant. That way, I've had people before be like, I missed the notification. It's because you had it on hourly instead of instant. So turn it to instant.
I've had, and I am personally, that happened to me. I got a flood of notifications all at once. I remember on a Sunday from everybody at the Convince Me crew. And I was just like, oh, I missed everything. Okay. All right. Now let's move over to the Bet365 anytime touchdown boosted parlay. And, Nick, it's pretty chalky, but I mean, we couldn't not take it. We're going to be parlaying Jalen Hurts and Travis Kelce to each score a touchdown in this game. Bet365, they did us a solid. Initially, when you parlayed these two to score a touchdown, is that plus 280. They have actually bumped it up to us, to plus 350. Now, if you're coming into this game and you aren't aware of who Travis Kelce and Jalen Hurts are, again, thank you for watching the show, because you're probably not watching football regularly. But for Travis Kelce, here's what you need to know about him scoring touchdowns. 5 straight playoff games, he has scored a touchdown. 8 of the last 10 playoff games, he has scored a touchdown. Heavily featured in this offense. As I referred to earlier, when they played against each other in week 4 in 2021, he had odds of upwards of like minus 150 to score a touchdown. And Jalen Hurts on the other side finished second in the NFL in rushing touchdowns as a quarterback. He had 20 rushing attempts just in the last 2 playoff games, 5 of them in the red zone. And he had a rushing touchdown in both of those playoff games. As I mentioned as well, both are the most bet players to score today. And for reference, I know a lot of people would say, well, I don't want to bet the chalk. Cooper Kupp scored last year, and he was the most bet touchdown scorer as well. So again, guys will look, these teams are going to look for their studs in these instances. So Jalen Hurts and Travis Kelce, we have that now boosted to plus 350. Nick, a lot of people like to ask us too, like, how come you don't do first touchdown scores or last touchdown scores? Well, we got some for Super Bowl 57. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I think this is my favorite of the 2 that I have. For first touchdown score, I am going to go with Isaiah Pacheco. Grab them at 10-1. And what I really like about Pacheco is he has monstrous usage splits between the first 10 minutes of the game and the last 10 minutes of the game. And you'd think with the Chiefs leading so much that he would get a lot of last 10-minute usage, but actually he gets big first 10-minute usage splits, especially in the passing game. So if you just take each player's share of his receptions that he gets in the first 10 minutes, it should be 1/6 of his, on average, you would think it would be about 1/6 of his total receptions, because 10 minutes is 1/6 of the full game. Well, because the Eagles and the Chiefs are so good and they're able to rush a lot at the end of the game, they end up being a little front-loaded on their usage because they're running the ball out at the end of the game in the last 10 minutes. So the average player has about 19% to 19.5% of his receptions come in the first 10 minutes. Well, Pacheco actually has over 33% of his receptions come in the first 10 minutes of the game. So in the passing game, he gets a monstrous usage. And then, of course, in the rushing game, he's the lead back in terms of the running game. So he gets the early running work as well, typically. So I think this is a really good spot to take Isaiah Pacheco, especially with how the Eagles are not very good versus running backs. They are 21st in defensive rush DVOA. You absolutely can run on them. And they're 24th in defensive pass DVOA to the running back position. So give me Isaiah Pacheco, first touchdown at 10-1. I got half a unit on it.
I love this, man. And one of the reasons why I like it is because when you look to see who are the 5 most bet players, the fact that we're seeing Pacheco at third, it's difficult to get guys in the top 5 with 10-1 odds in this spot. So again, kudos to you for finding that value. And Pacheco has, I mean, as a 7th round pick, has looked like every bit of the back that he was set out to be. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to get activated today. I doubt he'll probably even get a snap with the way that Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon have been playing. Now, I took a different angle on this one, Nick, and what I did is, so Travis Kelce is the most bet touchdown scorer of the game. I know he's going to probably be one of the most best first touchdown scorers of the game. So I usually tend to steer clear of first touchdown bets during the regular season, just because I find them to be too volatile. But in this game, I try to find value. And the guy that I found value on, it goes a bit against your pick. But again, at the same time, I feel like if this is happening, we're probably in a good spot here. And I'm going to take Travis Kelce to score the first touchdown, but not the first touchdown of the game. I'm going to have Travis Kelce to score the first Chiefs touchdown of the game. So when you look through the Eagles defense, the first touchdowns they allowed during the regular season, 6 of the 17 regular season games saw a tight end score first. And now a little bit of a shout out to a previous edition of the Touchdown Show, but one of them was Taysom Hill, which was a guy that you had bet on him to score. So I know that obviously I bent the rules a little bit to fit this trend, but as Sean Koerner, he was on the show earlier, he has listed him as a tight end. So I am listing Taysom Hill as a tight end for this argument. And Kelce has scored the first Chiefs touchdown in 8 of 19 games this season. That includes the playoffs. In reference the Jaguars and Bengals game, he scored the first touchdown in both of those games for the Chiefs. He has scored 9 of his 15 touchdowns this season in the first half, which I think is important. And he's got at least 1 touchdown in 5 straight playoff games. So we know about the usage about Travis Kelce. But from an odds tracking standpoint, I was able to get this at plus 330. He has had odds of this for this prop and market around plus 250 or lower in 15 of the 17 regular season games. So we're getting a little bit of value here. So if I'm going to be betting on Travis Kelce to score a touchdown, I'm either betting it on our Bet365 anytime touchdown boosted parlay, or I'm taking it this angle for him to score the first Chiefs touchdown instead of the anytime, which could be, range from minus 120 to minus 150, depending on the book.
I hope you're wrong. I hope it's Pacheco.
Well, if it's Pacheco, then we're laughing because, again, I got a lot of Chiefs exposure, as they say, coming into this game.
No, it is a solid pick, though. I mean, he's the man on the Chiefs. So, especially if they get close, they don't have to, but especially if they get close to the goal line, he's certainly one of their best options. But another great option on the Chiefs, and I'm taking this guy for last touchdown, is Jerick McKinnon. You can get him at 14-1 for last touchdown. I threw a quarter unit on this one. If we go back to looking at these usage splits that I talked about, only 5 players have a percentage of their total targets above 16.7% inside the last 10 minutes. And that's because the median is around 11% for these two teams, because, like I said, they're always usually leading at the end of the game. So only 5 players have over 16.7%. And of course, McKinnon is one of those. He's actually second at 18.4% of his targets coming inside the last 10 minutes. That is, of those top 5 players, only he and Juju Smith, who's in third, are kind of like the guys that are most likely to see consistent usage in the top 5 or even top 6 of this metric, because Boston Scott, I think, is in 6th in this metric. And I don't think we're really saying he's the consistent usage guy. So I think, it's either McKinnon or Juju Smith-Schuster who get a little bit of a bump if we're just looking at their individual share of their own targets coming at late in the game. And I'd rather lean on McKinnon here instead of Juju Smith-Schuster. And that's simply because those Eagles defensive backs are good. So I think just in terms of a matchup perspective, McKinnon is the obvious way to go. We mentioned again in the Pacheco segment, Eagles 21st in DVOA versus the run in case they hand it off to McKinnon, but 24th in defensive pass DVOA to the running back as well. So obviously McKinnon very heavily used in the passing game in 2-minute drills and trailing game scripts. So I think this is just a really good spot to take McKinnon to close out the game because the Eagles are favored. So it is a little bit more likely that they are leading late in the game. And so McKinnon on the field to score, to maybe win the game for the Chiefs, or at least get him a shot at winning late in the game there. So I'm going to take Jerick McKinnon to score the final touchdown at 14-1.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I like too, Nick, is that it's a nice little tie-in to Bet What Happens Live, because if the Eagles are up by 10 or more, I'm probably going to be bringing up this prop about him scoring the last touchdown in that game and seeing if we might be able to get even more enormous value. So make sure, again, to watch Bet What Happens Live starting at the 2-minute warning of Super Bowl 57. So now, Nick, we're betting most of the touchdowns at the Action Network. I mean, we're on a show talking about our favorite touchdown bets, but it's not exclusive to us. A lot of people at the Action Network love to bet on touchdown scores. Our own Sean Koerner, everybody else convinced me. So here is a nice little reel of people who work at Action Network and who they're betting for anytime touchdown scores in Super Bowl 57.
My favorite anytime touchdown pick, Kenneth Gainwell. Love the price, love him as an option when they're in the red zone.
Travis Kelce's getting in the end zone. That's what he does. 8 of his last 9 postseason games, in each of the last 5, he's found a paint.
Joe TD Fortson, baby. Take it to the bank.
Give me Quez Watkins at way too much value here. All 3 of his touchdowns this season were longer than 20 yards. Look for him to make a big play in the big game here.
Give me Patrick Mahomes at plus 400 to score a touchdown. Much has been made of this ankle injury. He did just enough to get a first down against Cincinnati to set up the game-winning field goal. Could easily see this happening inside the 5-yard line. All the attention on Kelsey and Gray and these running backs that Kansas City has. Give me Patrick Mahomes. Bootleg action to the crib.
Expect to see some heavy goal line packages from the Chiefs, and that will open the door for Noah Gray, 8-1, backup tight end, anytime touchdown score.
My favorite play for anytime touchdown score is Kenneth Gainwell. He is a red zone threat, and the Eagles like to use him in the red zone. So to me, at over a plus 300 number, a guy that scored in back-to-back games, I love the value on Kenneth this week.
Sky Moore. Who? Yes, Sky Moore. Either a gadget play or a return. He's going to find the end zone. Andy Reid knows how to dial it up, and the kid makes plays.
I'm going against my co-host here. We're going with the real gadget player of this Kansas City offense, and it's Kadarius Toney.
I'm going with Jalen Hurts at plus 110. The Chiefs play man coverage at one of the highest rates in the league. That's good for running quarterbacks.
Give me Philly defense plus 750, 21 defensive touchdowns and 56 Super Bowls, all but won by the winning team. 15 of the last 30 Super Bowls. Once every 2 Super Bowls. History says bet on a touchdown from the winning defense in the Super Bowl.
Wow, that was awesome. And Nick, I don't even think there was any like I was expecting like a consensus, like, let's say if there's 20 of them, 15 are all on Jalen Hurts or all on Travis Kelce. Like, no, everybody's got an angle, which I love for Super Bowl 57. And the touchdown show is presented by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. If you sign up with promo code ACTION, you'll get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, and now Virginia. Bet $1 and you get $200 in bet credits. Nick, that's all for today. That's all for the season. We've got the touchdown picks. We've got live betting scenarios. We've got a Bet365 same game touchdown parlay boost. And we're going to see you back at halftime for Super Bowl 57 when Nick and I give out some potential live opportunities for Bet What Happens Live. And before we go, I just want to give a special shout out to the heavy lifters for us during the NFL season. Our production crew, Christina Ventura, Charlie DeSturco, Gifford Gould, Bridie Rubino, Barbara Alberts, Hutton Jackson, Matt Romkey with the fantastic graphics. Like, outside of my poor results this year, I really could not have asked for a better year and a better crew to work with. And Nick, I just want to thank you as well. Thank you for coming into my world of touchdowns. You've taught me a lot of different ways to approach it, things that I'm going to be able to take away forever. You've been a great partner this season, and I look forward to doing this all over again next year.
Hell of a year. Let's keep it rolling.
All right. And if you missed Convince Me from today, you can rewatch the show, download the Action Network app. You can get all of our picks in one place. You can check out all of our Super Bowl 57 bets and prompts in the Action app. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at GDog5000. Make sure to follow Nick at RotoDoc. I want to thank everybody again for watching the Touchdown Show presented by Bet365. We'll see you next season. Bon chance.